Hey everyone, welcome back to the Primal Blueprint podcast. If you're listening to this, it's also a video episode that will be on Mark's Daily Apple. The links are in the show notes for the video and the audio. I'm here with Danielle Schaaf. She is a faith-based life coach, teacher, and recovering people pleaser who is all about you walking in your God-given worth. Vulnerability, salsa dancing, and traveling are a few of her favorite things. I spoke with her because I was on her incredible internet series summit called Walk in Your Worth. Series, which we'll be putting, which is now over, but still accessible. So we will put the link in the show notes to connect to this, which is a variety of speakers that Danielle interviewed about this topic, walking your worth, knowing your worth. And one of the things, well, I'll just ask you because we'll get to some of the things we have in common, but what was the turning? You were a teacher. What were you doing that you were like, I'm not meant to do this, or I'm meant to do something else. I'm meant to give a message. I'm meant to coach people.
I love that question. Thank you so much. So being a teacher, I also in turn had been a life coach because, you know, I teach languages. So I'm a linguist by trade, but a huge thing around learning another language is knowing that you're able and capable to do it. So if anyone's ever learned another language, it's really hard work. And you
need lots of like encouragement and like pep talks.
Literally every day, y'all, I was like, you can do this. You can learn English. You can do this. You have a reason. You have a purpose. Like, because learning a language, learning anything new, as you know, Elle, it taps into your worth 10 times out of 10. Am I capable? Can I do this? Do I have the confidence? Do I have the confidence?
I feel dumb. I don't feel like I'm going to be able to get it. I've been there.
Yeah, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can never see myself succeeding. And so I just decided, you know what? Instead of just talking about learning another language, I want to talk about your life. Where are these limiting beliefs coming from? Where are they stemming from? And how can you get to the other side to be doing the things that you really love and that you find purpose in and that you find joy in? Because life is so short. I mean, we're here one day and gone the next, and we're only given the moments that our day to day that we're given. And so it sounds cliche, but it just is so real. And I just came to this acknowledgement of, there's just so many more people out there that I can reach, and so many more people who could probably relate to what this unworthy mind game that we play with ourselves, and reach them and talk to them, encourage them, and, you know, fight and encourage them alongside. So I switched from teaching to life coaching. I mean, essentially that's it. Like, I just hate when people say I can't do something, because it's just not true. Unless you really believe that, unless that's really what you believe. And guess what? I've been there. I'm still there. There's things I do every day to get me out of my comfort zone, to build confidence, to build competence, because to learn something new requires me to be humble and requires me to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to do it. And it takes an open mindset to be able to do that. Or like a cheerleader or a life coach or a friend to come in, a confidence coach, to be like, hey, like, you actually can do this. Let's tap into where you're not believing. Let's tap into those areas where you're disbelieving, where you have, you know, limiting beliefs, and let's expand them and have, you know, exciting beliefs about yourself, about God, about whatever it is that you're struggling with.
Let's talk a little bit about the struggle of being a people pleaser, because, you know, that's something when someone says to me, oh, I used to be a people pleaser, I'm like, oh, well, thank God you figured that out. Because life sucks as a people pleaser, to be honest with you. It's really a bad road to go down. And then we talked a little bit about how, you know, you had an alcoholic mother, and anyone with an alcoholic parent. I also had an alcoholic father. There are varying degrees of this, right? But here's the bottom line. Anybody who has an alcoholic parent, yes, the worst would be like they beat you. Okay. Oh God, right. Horrible torture, like awful behavior. And even though like you could go to the least innocuous, which is like my dad, who's just a joker, drinking, standing around getting drunk. Both scenarios are unavailability. Yep. They are not there. They are not present. They are abandoning. They are rejecting. It doesn't matter whether they're actively, even my dad being happy, joking around. Everyone wants to hang out with him, having drinks. Yeah, but he still wasn't doing his job. He still dropped the ball as a dad, even though, but and I think I told you, because he got away with it a bit, because everyone's like, it's so fun to hang out. He's so cool. Oh, your dad's so cool, right? But you're like, yeah, he's cool, but he's like the king of the losers. And he's also like he's not like, you can hang out and have drinks with him and joke around, but that's the limitation of the relationship. And that doesn't really breed intimacy and true connection. So
Yes.
I'm not sure if that your people pleasing was related to that, but I'd love you to talk a little bit about your mom and talk about like your people pleasing behavior. What would you do? Talk about that former life as a people pleaser.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. And yeah, we did talk a little bit about this. So what I'm about to say is not to receive pity. It just is what it
Sure.
is. It's part of my testimony, part of my story. So I grew up with an alcoholic mother, and she was not physically abusive, but emotionally abusive. So anytime I did something well, I was praised. If I did something not well, I was not praised, and I was left alone. And so there was just literally this gaping hole in my heart that said, I want to be loved. I want to be accepted. I need love. I need to be accepted. That is a huge role of a parent. And mine just dropped the ball in that area for pretty much most of my childhood. And so I hit adult life, and I'm like, I don't feel very loved. I don't feel lovable. And I had all these unworthy thoughts in my head. And it was like, "Oh, I don't think I'm good enough to date this guy," or, "Oh, I don't think I'm good enough to pass a math class." I mean, this is where it started in high school. And I
Sure.
just real and then I got into 19, 20, 21, 22 college age, and I'm like, I find myself doing things only to please others, so that I don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers. I don't want to have too much of an opinion, because I have too much of an opinion. Somebody might disagree. If someone disagrees with me, then I have to have a voice. And I didn't feel like I could really be Danielle Schaaf. I
That's
felt
a,
like,
I just want to even almost repeat that because that is such a great explanation of the internal workings. Because as you're listening, you're seeing, right? It's, I don't want to say my truth because I don't want to cause something that is going to actually even have to me maybe express more truth or lie again or whatever.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
you're like kind of dancing around, it's emitting, you're not expressing, you're just like avoiding.
And in that avoidance, I would go home exhausted. And then
Oh, I bet.
constantly,
Yeah, the vibe. Yeah.
you can't keep it up. I couldn't keep it up. And then I was like, what in the hell is wrong with me? Wrong question,
By
but
the way,
it got,
at the time, were you kind of like this with everyone, your friends? So I'm assuming there might have been a scenario where like there's a point where like you kind of know you're bullshit because you're not saying what you really want to say. Did you even have trust then for them that they liked you for who you were?
no, I questioned that.
Yeah.
And I was homecoming queen even at 18. I mean, I have such a great way to connect with people. And I love that about myself. And to this day, being 30, I still am. I'm
Yes.
actually using
It
it in a,
shows through right now. It's a great, you're extrovert in the positive ways. Yeah.
thank you. Absolutely. Like, this is who I am. But it took me years to finally be able to stand on what I believe, and not just like my Christian beliefs, but like who I am as a woman. Like, if I have a thought now, like, I'm not scared to say it, and say it in a kind way, right? But that came from realizing I'm not only am I exhausted. I'm sure some of you, if you can relate to the people pleasing, you're probably tired, and you're like, man, like, I would look at other people and be like, "Oh, they speak their truth so easily. So now I'm almost jealous. Like, how can they walk around and just totally be themselves? Whether I agreed or not, that wasn't the point, right?
Right.
I started to envy almost people who would just completely be
Mm.
themselves. And I was like, I am going to be myself. Forget this. I'm going to learn who Danielle Schaaf is. And I'm going to not only learn who she is, but I'm going to embrace her and then be her.
So
Embrace her and be her.
how did you go about edging out of people pleasing? Like, what do you remember your first few or important foray into finally going, I'm going to speak up here and not do the same thing?
I do. I was
Mm.
26 years old. I had started intense therapy because my fiance had just broken up with me. My fiance was my best friend of 10 years, and I had what I thought at the time was love, had loved him. And so my whole kind of world came crashing down, and I started therapy. And I am so grateful that I started therapy. I think everybody can use therapy. It is simply going to somebody who knows more about mental health than I do. And we ended up getting into these words like codependency, and I didn't really know much about the word. That's another word for people pleasing, but take it what it is. And so I started identifying as a people pleaser. That was the first thing. I realized I am a people pleaser. Have codependency.
That therapy helped you identify yourself. You realize, oh, that's the thing I don't feel guilty about that I'm exhausted about.
Self-awareness is first. And it was very hard for me to become self-aware until I had somebody speaking speaking back to me, listening to me, share my deepest inward parts of myself that I was struggling with, because my worth was completely questioned and shut down when this man I thought I loved and I thought trusted with all of my being left. And that left me so heartbroken and
Triggering from the mom shit. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, okay, so my therapist is like, well, let's heal those mommy wounds. I was like, oh yeah, I guess my mom's an alcoholic and I guess I haven't been loved like my whole life. So probably I was trying to find love in all the wrong places. And on top of that, people pleasing. So not only was love being found in the wrong places, people pleasing was attached to it. I mean, it was a disaster. And so back to your question, I'm in counseling and she was like, hey, Danielle, you can put up boundaries with your mom and you can, create the type of life that you want. And you can actually speak to whoever you want and not speak to whoever you want. And I was like, no one's ever told me that before. I mean, I'm 26. It's not that young. And I'm like,
someone's they're like giving you permission for what you might have been feeling inherently, but felt guilty or too attached to, too codependent in, for someone to go, by the way, this is exactly what, Al-Anon is great for,
yep.
right? It's because, I had someone in my life who many years ago who was issues with this, and I literally had to have a session with an Al-Anon, like counselor, therapist person who specialized in this, and talk to another friend who had been sober for many years, for both of them to give me permission to be like, Elle, this person's been this way this long. There may not, or that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
At some point, your behavior is also enabling.
Yeah.
And it's a tough thing because it's that line between you love them, your family, or their boyfriend, whatever the situation is attachment, a lifelong friendship, it doesn't matter. And it's funny because I think the moment it's not that the other person is always going to get it, but if there's a chance that the other person's going to get it when they're alcoholic, it is when everyone says, guess what? We've had enough. You're out. When we did that with a friend of mine, I won't mention his name. He wouldn't mind me telling the story, but I have a friend who's been sober 6 years now. Before he was sober, before he was sober and he was a disaster. Basically when he got into rehab, his father called me and said, what did you say to my son? Because he came to us and he said, you and two other of his close friends apparently read him the riot act or did something, because it was like the bottom that he had to hit to go to his parents to ask for help. And now he's 6 years sober, has a new wife and kid. He's doing great. And you know what that was? It was us basically being like, you're done. We're freaking done with you. We're out. You're a father. Look at what you're doing. Your son, like brutal. It was the brutal day we finally said no, not only drew the boundary, but we ripped him to shreds. And apparently we all did that. We didn't even know each other, by the way.
Wow.
I think how we did. But it wasn't until that time that he was able to. Had we done it sooner? Maybe. We all reached our limit, our boundary, and that's what it is. So if anything's going to make somebody pull themselves up, it might be that, it may not, but either way, you got to pull yourself out of it. And that's the hardest thing about being with or having a family member or someone close to you that's going through addiction or is an addict, no matter how nice, no matter how nasty. It's like nothing you can do changes their mind. So what are you going to do? You do you.
And that is so incredible story. First of all, second of all, it's sobering though. It is humbling. I mean, it's been some of the hardest things I've done to date is to admit I have problems. And yes, some of them were caused from a deficit of love from my mother. Okay, but I'm an adult and I have to take responsibility for my actions, for my boundaries, for my worth, right? Because I can't create a boundary with somebody if I don't think that I'm worth it. I can't use my voice and speak up for what I need if I don't think that I'm worth it.
That's right. And that's why it all goes back to that
all of it.
The inner confidence, that self-worth, that self-love. Let me ask you with the, all right, so alcoholic, people pleaser, you're finally going, oh my God, I need to change myself. Were you always a person of faith? Did you get into that later? Had you always been someone who's been, you call yourself a faith-based life coach. So when did that faith come in? Has it always been there?
No, it has not. So I was raised sort of in the Catholic Church and we just kind of went nominally on occasion. And listen, I'm about to get real here with you. At 15, all right, at 15 years old, My parents divorced, and I started getting into finding love and worth in all the wrong places. Attention from boys, drugs, alcohol, stealing. I mean, I've got a crazy testimony. And so I did all that
By the way,
craziness.
I just pointed to myself if you're listening because I've
Yeah.
admitted almost all of these things too, which by
Okay.
the way, a lot of kids have alcoholic parents. Getting a lot of this kind of fucking
Well,
stuff.
it made sense. That's what I'd seen, right?
Totally.
Like, okay, so I'm gonna go to what I see and then praise. I mean, I played soccer at the time. Here's the thing, you can relate. I mean, I got good grades. I was awesome on the outside, fulfilled on the outside, on the inside, hurting as hell and just wanting and needing something. And so I had met some awesome women on the soccer team through a Young Life. It's a ministry for high schoolers. And they had taken me to this thing called Young Life. It was once a week and they talked about Jesus. I didn't know who Jesus was really. Like I didn't know or think that there was room in my life to have a personal relationship with God. And well, I did. And I realized God has come to bring life and life to the full. And he is a real source of unconditional love. Like the love that surpasses anything I will ever see or feel or touch while on earth. And I was so badly craving love that I was like, I don't have anything to lose. And so I
Right.
started a relationship with Jesus and awesome people, loving people who met me in my pain, met me in my struggle and said, you're worth it, Danielle. You can do this, Danielle. And so paired with this incredible community of Christian believers, paired with the Bible and Jesus himself, paired with my resilient attitude as a 15-year-old. I mean, my life completely took a 180. I stopped everything. And now it wasn't easy. It was not easy. There's actually been nothing easy about this. I actually lost
Sure.
friends over becoming a Christian. And maybe some of you are listening are like, I don't agree with that faith. And that's totally cool. I'm
Yep.
totally open to combos about everything. But it was out of a painful space that God came and met me, but he continues to this day, 14 years later. It is the same. I wake up some days out and I'm like, I'm not lovable. I'm not loving. I don't have parents I can emotionally rely on. I feel lonely. I feel alone. And I have to remind myself that that's just not true. While I feel one way, this is what is true. And I hold on to scripture. I hold on to mantras. I hold on to friends, community, other awesome people I'm meeting on the internet through business. I mean, there's a slew of community and ways
Yes.
to grow out there. I just have to admit I need that. And I not need only need it, but want it. Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I yearn for the day that my mother is sober and not just from alcohol, because that's just the first part, right?
Well, because by the way, you can get sober from the substance, but you can still be a dry drunk. It's the
Yep.
behavior that goes along with it. So I think that's
Yep.
what you're. Yeah.
No, because below, come on. Why do people become addicts? Because they don't want to deal with
Right.
okay,
So
we all
unless you deal with that, you've only gotten a little piece of that sober journey. Yeah. Oops. Excuse me.
I'm one decision away in my coping from becoming an addict. I mean, I am so self-aware that like I, as a people pleaser, as growing up like that, as like wanting love for as attention instead of free, I have to really watch my lines when I date, watch my lines in my friendships. Like I am just so self-aware, but that's the beauty. A lot of my friends call me strong, but I'm like, no, I'm actually very weak. And I'm actually very self-aware. And in that, I've grown to be strong. And I want to teach other people how to do this.
That's
Like
right. Yeah.
you
Well,
don't have
let me ask you
to.
this, because I'm not like I would technically never hire a faith-based coach just 'cause I would be like, oh well, that wouldn't be the person for me because that's kind of not what my life's about.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming, like, let's just be clear. You guys are listening to Danielle. She's cool as hell. If you like her and you're not a Christian, I'm sure you coach people that aren't
Yeah.
like, there's other ways to coach.
about
I'm sure you're not coaching directly from the Bible every single time
Yeah.
you're talking to someone, but you might be if you're talking to someone who does want that faith encouragement. So I just want to make that difference that just
Yeah.
because this is what you call yourself, this is not the only thing that you do with regards to how you coach people.
Yeah, I do think that it's very important, but I definitely am coaching people, right now who don't think that that's the most important. And we talk about those things openly. That's what I love. I'm like, well, let's talk about it then. What do you believe? What do I believe? Let's go
Right.
there. And it's like, how do I say this? It's a journey, right? And just because I use the word recovering in, with the jurin, because it's still ongoing. Like, yes, I have had tons of wins in battles, and I'm able to teach this and people get results through working with me. But also it's like, I got to check myself too. I got to check. My mom's still an alcoholic. I still have boundaries with her. I still have boundaries with my friends, with my coworkers, with my own self. Like, I want my yes to be yes and my no to be no. And I can only be a woman like that when I'm walking in my worth. And I truly know like what God says about me and what I say about me. You know what I mean? Like, my past does not have to define my present and my future. It just doesn't.
No, it's still a choice. And by the way, even if, like, for example, my father's not alive anymore, he still would have been an alcoholic. But here's the thing. Doesn't matter if someone's dead or they have stopped drinking and changed. That doesn't mean you don't need to repair the trauma of the effects of when you were under that. So, just because your embarrassing alcoholic parent died doesn't mean you're off scot-free either. You got some investigating to do, because I'm assuming it's affecting your relationships, your work life, or whatever else, in whatever way it affected each person individually.
Yes.
I love how open you are about this. I think it's great that you're like, hey, I think that, faith in God is the best thing. But you know what, for other people, like, that's why I use the word universe, because it's kind of universal. And for some people, they use the word God. I'm talking to my friends, they'll say God, I say universe, just because I don't believe in the God that you believe in, or scripture specific. I don't believe in it, but I have that same faith in this thing. I might consider it a collective energy versus a person from a story, right? But it's still sort of the same level of kind of believing in an unknown that's there to support you, that always has your back, right? And so I think, and this is what I chatted with you about too, faith is a great way to increase your confidence and to increase your worth. If you have a modicum of faith in a religion, most of them teach things that will help you feel that if you let it, right? And I wish you were around when I was coaching someone who I could tell did go to church every Sunday and stuff, but they were losing their faith in their healing journey. They threw it all like anybody. They were going to church every Sunday. They were just showing up. They weren't in it. Everyone gets off track like that, no matter what it is, right? And so I brought it up with her, even though I'm not a faith-based coach. I know enough about faith and Christianity and her religion to help coach her in that arena. But I think it would have been really helpful to just be like, call Danielle so that you can get your faith back, so that you get some hope back, so you can start to generate some good intention and some good vibes, and putting the lightness out versus the I'm never going to get better vibe. And so I love that you do call yourself a faith-based coach, and that you're in that, because there are so many people that are religious and like this story, lose their faith at certain times, need to renew, or maybe never was sparked up enough anyway. And that's where you can help them too.
Yes, and yes, because God is very much living and active. And I understand ruts happen. Listen, crap happens to all of us. None of us are, my counselor and I used to talk about this, none of us are free of trauma. Like, we can protect ourselves as much as we can, but we are only in control of so much. But we better be in control of what we are gifted and given in this life. That is like our responsibility. And it is something to be enjoyed and embraced, instead of like shying away from, or always honing in on what's not working versus what is working in life. And it's just every day I wake up with a choice. Who am I going to serve today, and how am I going to live my day? And I get to choose. That's actually the biggest gift I think we're given. But when we are not in the right headspace, like you said, when our minds are filled with what's gone on wrong or what's not working, like, of course, you're not going to want to choose, because you may not be able to, or it may be a struggle. And guess what? That's okay. So then hire somebody, or talk to somebody, or find a way to make the life that you really want and that you deserve. Because life is, again, it's short, but it's not free of pain. But pain can be turned into anything that you want it to be. Anything.
Absolutely. The worst things that happened in my life, like I told you, have been the best. Hypothyroidism and a permanent injury, which would be like, I'm cursed, God hates me, these are horrible things. Oh, turns out they were great. Turns out they were all in support of a future goal I didn't realize it was. Absolutely. So gifts, some of the biggest life, gifts in life come wrapped in shit. That's totally like a mantra. You just got to give it a minute. You have to have faith and give it a minute. Something will be good. I saw something talking about worth. I forget, I was watching like a Valentine's Hallmark movie, whatever, something on TV, like one of those movies. And sometimes I put those on because they're super sweet and innocent, and you're just like, it's like whatever's. And so I had this on. It was like a Valentine's Day, and someone was, or what the show was, they're talking to a little girl who was afraid she'd never find anybody, or like, oh, no one likes me for the dance, or whatever that was.
Yeah.
And the person said something very classic that we've heard a lot. Oh, someday you're going to make some boy really happy. And
Yeah.
I was like, motherfucker, at the TV, I was like, how dare you? How about you? A boy will find you. He'll make you happy. How dare, like, I just had this moment of being like, oh, it's interesting the way our language or how I caught that. Nothing wrong with that. It
Yeah.
goes both ways, but it's just funny. Like you'll, hey, how about someone's going to make me happy? How about that? Why is the onus on me? This goes back to worth. It's like walking into a date and going, I hope they like me. No, you hope you like them. And that's where I brought that up, because that was a worth thing that I saw in a TV thing. It's just it's a line. It's just one sentence in a TV movie. And I'm going, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, girl, if you find yourself working for your worth, then you have to do some inward looking and
Right.
ask yourself,
Right.
why am I doing that? If you're showing up to a date saying, oh, I hope he likes me, or if you're showing up to meet up with a friend and like, oh, I hope that we don't have any hard conversations, or if you're showing up to your parent like, oh, I hope they don't like say something that makes me feel like shit again. The question is not with any of them, it's with you. Where is your worth and what are you going to do about it? And it's a hard truth to come to. Again, it is very hard to face that and to get super honest with yourself, but that is where breakthrough comes. That is where confidence comes. That is where true freedom is on the other side of that, because if not, you're in bondage to people pleasing, you're in bondage to codependency, you're in bondage to not being your authentic self. That is so great and beautiful and amazing.
And wouldn't you love, don't we all want someone to love us and see our worth for who we are, not for some fake manufactured, people pleasing, fake pretend outward something? Because you don't get away with that, because you know they don't know the true you. You're never going to be able to trust it. But when you're yourself and you're authentic, and then someone does respond that way, and you find someone who cares about you, loves you, friend, family, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, you know it's because you've been showing them the truth, and therefore it is true. They love you for who you are, not for who you're showing them to be.
That's real. Here, listen to this. My last boyfriend, I'm honest about this because it's just real.
Yeah,
I've learned to be honest. My ex, at the very end of our relationship, he said, I feel like you're using me, Danielle. And I was like, no, I'm not using you. Like, you're wrong. But on the inside, I was using him for his support and his attention and the free meals. And I was like, we broke up for a lot of reasons. He was an addict and lied to me. But the reality of it is I was people pleasing. Again, I fell right back into not being my true authentic self. And it cost me a relationship. I own my part of it. He had
it wasn't meant to be as an addict, but still.
Right. And that's another thing. Why
so what could you have brought in if you weren't in that space? And again, that's the thing too. You brought that in. That was a lesson and a gift combined in one. Sometimes we need to learn this stuff, but it's like, oh, once you learn it, then you can attract an upper level of experience, less heartache, less trauma breakup, less right, all that stuff.
And that's exactly what's coming my way, because I'm a different woman. That was like 8 months ago. Like, I'm a completely different woman because of it. In fact, I've launched like a bunch of like new clients and this incredible wave of like people. And I'm like, yes, like it's possible. Anything's possible that I put my mind to. And I just believe that for myself and from God to me. And then I can help and encourage other people in that, because the battle is real.
Yeah,
it's real.
It's
like,
real.
And there's no shame. Shame off. And
no shame about your shame. You don't have to do a Facebook video about it, but you got to talk to someone about it. You got to get it out, therapist, coach, whatever. You got to get good with it. And it doesn't mean you ever have to tell anyone about it. You can take it to the grave, but you got to get good with it in yourself.
That's right.
Or it's always going to creep up as a shame thing that's going to affect the outward projection of who you are. And it's not going to attract the right scenarios. Let's talk a little bit about Walk in Your Worth series. We will put the link in the show notes at blog.primalblueprint.com, and I'll put it on the social media posts that I do for this episode, a link for you to connect. It's already over, but let's tell you, how many speakers did you have? And just give us 5. That was a really fun conversation with you that I had on there.
I had such a fun conversation with you too, Elle. And real quick, it's walkinyourworthseries.com. Elle will put a link, and I got 22 speakers. And the idea is not settling in life, like being proud of who you really are. We talk about things like confidence, leveling up in dating, knowing your true worth. I talk with married people, single people, dating coaches, psychologists, pastors, counselors, like across the board, and just an encouragement. I mean, there's a little something for everybody in there. There's a little something, a little interview, a little piece of content. I've gotten tons of feedback on how these interviews are really helping people, know their worth and realize, like, you know what, I've been putting that podcast off for 10 years. It's time to do that podcast. Or, you know what, I've been having this cycle in dating. It's time for a change. And it's like, awesome. You can change. You can do it. Like, I'm here if you want support, or find somebody else, or just listen to the content and be blessed by it.
Absolutely. I mean, so many of the summits that I've either been a part of, listened to later because I was a part of, or I was a participant, it's always so much great content in one.
Yes.
And you get so many good nuggets. You never know. I mean, I've had someone just say one sentence that's like changed my whole shiz. Do you know what I mean? And made me really think about something. So give us the website one more time. I'll put the links in the show notes though.
Yeah, walkinyourworthseries.com.
Great.
Awesome.
What else would you like to leave with our audience? I was so grateful to meet you. I think people who know me and have heard me a ton over the years would hear you and go, oh, I can see why Elle likes her.
That makes me so happy, first of all. Second of all, I would never have met you, Elle, if it wasn't for me putting on this summit, for example.
Sure.
It's incredible. I love meeting new people. And I think what I would say is just the question, are you walking in your worth?
Yeah.
Like, are you living the life that you know you are worth and that you want to build? And if not, that's the good news. You can make a change. And if you are, that's also the good news. Keep going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll put everything to connect with Danielle on social media, etc., and her amazing summit series. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.